Welcome back, friends, to this installment of Custom Time. Today we're doing something a little different. If you have seen my videos before, you will know that I usually present watches that I have built. This time I will actually foray into the world of watch reviewing. Because I've never done this before, I decided to add an air of legitimacy to the video by including some fancy props in the background. That way, you out there can go, ooh, look at that loop and that old-timey pocket watch. He must really know what he's talking about. Now, the reason I don't usually do reviews of new watches is because in the end, there's really not so much that separates most of them from one another. I mean, how many ways can you find to say that a watch has the workhorse NH35 movement and 316 stainless steel and scratch-resistant sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating before you want to beat yourself upside the head with a cast iron skillet? So why am I doing this now? Well, because I love this watch, and I really wanted to tell you guys about it. What I have here is the captain from Cincinnati Watch Company. And let me just start by saying that I have no stake in this company. They didn't send me this watch for free to review. I'm just not that big a deal. I've been following these guys for a while on Instagram. This watch had my eyes since it was first unveiled. In fact, I ordered it probably within the first hour that the pre-order was available. So basically, this is a watch I bought for myself. I am profoundly happy with it, and I felt I needed to show it off to the world, or at least the 5 of you that are going to be watching this video. Okay, before we focus on the watch, let me just step back a moment and tell you about the Cincinnati Watch Company. The company was started in 2016 by 2 gentlemen named Rick Bell and Mark Stegman, with a clear focus on design and identity. If you look at their website, you will quickly see how much the city of Cincinnati inspires their watch design and the identity of the company. Nothing in their collection looks like it's made from off-the-shelf componentry. There is forethought, originality, and elegance in every piece. On top of this, the company has committed itself to giving a portion of their proceeds from all their watches to Cincinnati institutions like museums and food banks. Another element I particularly like about these guys is that they are positioning themselves to evolve into a true American watch company. In 2020, they brought in an accomplished and published watchmaker, Jordan Ficklin, as a partner in the company, moving all assembly to their headquarters. This not only means that every watch is assembled and quality controlled in Cincinnati, but also that they have a fully functional repair and warranty shop right there as well, eliminating the need to ship anything overseas. Okay, now let's talk about this watch. The Captain is actually part of a 3-watch collection called the Time Hill Collection. It is inspired by Cincinnati's historic Time Hill, which is the former offices of the Gruen Watch Company, which was one of the biggest watch manufacturers in the United States and remained in business from 1894 until 1958. The 3 watches that make up the Time Hill Collection are the Union Station version 2, the Cincinnatian, or Cincinnatian, however you pronounce that, and the Captain, which you see here. Given the standardization of current watch production methods, design and attention to detail are what really sets a great watch apart. The heyday of watch design, in my eyes, happened with the wristwatch revolution of the 1930s and 40s. This is a time when the Swiss watch industry really blossomed, and the American watch industry was trying very hard to compete with these overseas upstarts, leading to extensive innovation, research, and development. All of this was happening during the late Art Deco period of architecture and industrial design. Inspired by industrial innovation and a future that reaches for the sky, we see this period give rise to skyscrapers, airliners, futuristic concept automobiles, and grand train terminal stations that give you the promise of traveling vast distances with ease. This very era is what this watch draws its inspiration from, and it can be seen in every element of its design. Starting off with the facade, the mint green Arabic numerals stand out crisply against the golden dial, reminding of an era when radium was painted directly onto watches to give them their ghostly green glow. The blocky sans serif numerals paired with the railroad minute track is reminiscent of a clock you might see at a busy railway station, helping travelers get to their train on time. The gold-colored dial itself plays with light at every angle thanks to the fine brushed finish and the change in texture on the minute and 24-hour tracks. Finally, the facade is accented by the classic pencil hands with the lovely heat-blued finish. Now, I don't know if these hands are really blued in the traditional way or if they have some sort of applied finish on them, but the shade and depth of color really leaves nothing to be desired. Moving on, let's have a look at this case. Let's state from the outset that this case clearly is reminiscent of the Rolex Oyster Perpetual bubble back of the 1930s and 40s. What are my thoughts on that? It's about freaking time. The bubble back is easily one of the most iconic watches of that era, with a case that not only embodies 40s design aesthetic, but also is the direct predecessor to every current Rolex case. The fact that no one to this day has really emulated the striking lines of this watch is mind-boggling. What's even better, though, is that the captain truly pays homage by communicating about the bubble back in its design language, as opposed to just outright copying it dimension for dimension. I mean, seriously. An identical watch with a different brand name is a replica, a legal copy. It's not an homage, no matter what any brand website or brand ambassador tells you. So what is it about the design language of the bubble back and ultimately the captain that make it such a fantastic example of Art Deco design? Well, it's all about grandeur. You see, this design movement was not just about making bigger things, it was also about making things look bigger. The windows of Art Deco buildings would often get progressively smaller the higher you got, so people looking up at them from the street would have the illusion that they were even taller than they really were. Geometric shapes were often juxtaposed against each other, creating the sensation of space, while shapes that extended upwards, such as an upside-down triangle, for example, gave the sense of expansion into infinity. This is what we see expressed wonderfully in this watch case. Many modern watches smoothly grow their lugs out from the bezel, giving them a more flowing, integrated, and unassuming appearance. You will also see how the angle of the lugs and the convex shape between them all communicate compactness and convenience. This is why you often hear reviewers say that a 43mm watch wears much smaller than they expected. This watch, on the other hand, says a big F you to compactness and convenience. The base of the lugs is brought intentionally wider outside the bezel, and the angle of the lugs themselves is less acute, showing us two clearly distinct shapes. On top of this, the shape between the lugs is concave, giving the eye the perception of expansion out in space. All of this is capped off with a rather large exposed crown. This is why at a modest 36mm and an even more modest thickness, this watch wears much bigger. Finally, let's move away from the macro elements of the captain's case design and look at the fine details. You know, those things that take a watch from a great idea to a great watch. At first glance, one can see the thought that went into this piece. The aforementioned dial with the alternating finish, the highly polished bezel that contrasts with the evenly brushed mid-case with its clean, sharp lines, and the domed acrylic crystal that gives the watch vertical presence despite its very modest thickness of 7.6 millimeters, 10.3 if you include the crystal. Now, that low profile of the watch is owed to the use of the Ronda 713 jeweled quartz movement, which also contributes to the watch's light 4 ounces. Now, I know what you're thinking here. It is really clever of the Cincinnati Watch Company to use a movement based on one of the most revolutionary scientific developments of the 20th century on a watch inspired by an era of revolutionary discoveries. Okay, now lastly, I just want to show some love for this bracelet. It is very well integrated into the case, sitting perfectly between the lugs. It has a design reminiscent of the Jubilee, but with a much more thin, more integrated and low-profile feel, and none of the chunkiness of its famous cousin. The links contrast between brushed and polished, carrying on the theme from the case and bezel. There is a substantial taper here, which helps keep the majority of the focus on the watch and not the bracelet, and helps it adhere to the era that it emulates. The feel of the bracelet is also very nice, with smooth flexibility without any creaking or looseness you might get from a cheaper bracelet. Finally, there is this clasp, which is delightfully much smaller than the ones of every other bracelet watch that I own. The best part of the clasp, however, is purely functional. There are actually 2 different micro adjustments on here, meaning that you can adjust a bracelet by 2.5, 3.5, or 6 millimeters on top of the coarse adjustments from the extra links. This eliminates that need for having a longer clasp with multiple micro adjustment holes and doing that whole dance between adding and taking out links and then moving between holes to get the bracelet just right. Okay, well, that just about wraps it up. Thank you to those of you who stuck around, and I hope you enjoyed the review. Before I sign off, let me just give a quick disclaimer. I am not an architect or a student of design. If you are, and believe I was incorrect in some of my statements about Art Deco design, or just feel that there is something to add to the discussion, please feel free to contribute your insight in the comments. Just, don't be a dick. All right. Cheers, guys.